I lean on other guys to kind of help me with any type of, with I try to put myself into a room with the guys who know the most about that stuff and make sure I'm the dumbest guy in the room, and then I ask as many questions as I possibly can. So that's my learning process.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Drew Pearson. You are listening to the Pearson Perspective. This is a deep dive into the stories and mindsets of successful business operators and investors. Let's go have some fun. All right, today I'm with my good buddy, Will Haynie. We've known each other for a long time. Will is a really interesting guy. He is kind of got started in some crypto a long time ago, but what's real interesting is he's kind of continued to learn more and more about investing. I think there's a lot to learn today, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Will, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, great, man. You're from Shreveport, our same hometown. How in the world did you kind of get involved? I remember like 10 years ago, you were kind of in this whole Bitcoin thing, and that turned out to be a pretty good idea. How did all that come about?
Man, the more I tell the story, the harder it is for me to, the more unraveled it gets. But essentially what happened was I spent 3 years after school, after college, went to LSU with you, obviously. I kind of was just toiling around trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I spent some time kind of working in the health and fitness industry. And I was in Nashville for 2 years, lived in Richmond, Virginia for a year. And then finally, I kind of got to this point to where I was really, lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do, for the long haul. And so I decided to kind of take a break. And I moved up to Alaska and essentially made some money fishing up there, and then spent the next 2 years traveling. And somewhere in that mix, I think whenever I was in Alaska, my brother Brown called me. He said, "Hey, man, I came across this thing on Reddit, and it's called Bitcoin. And this is literally, I think, 2013. And I think Bitcoin was changing hands at that time around, I would say, between $80 to $130. And so he kind of found it, and he said, you want to throw some money together, and we'll start a little LLC, and we'll just buy it to hold it. And just like anything that you invest in or you have exposure to, he really was kind of reading every day, learning more about it. And he would, kind of call me and tell me, this is actually pretty interesting stuff. We should really kind of look for opportunities in this space and this and that. And effectively what we found was there was a massive arbitrage opportunity in the markets where you had the big players. At the time, it was literally just Coinbase, Gemini, and I think Kraken was around. And you could get an institutional account with these exchanges, which were literally the only three ways you could buy Bitcoin. And you could turn around and sell it on these peer-to-peer exchanges. And I mean, on the low end for 3-4% markup. But some days, when the markets got really crazy, your spread could be 20% on an arbitrage scheme, and you effectively have no risk in arbitrage. So we were buying Bitcoin and then turning around and selling it for a premium, and we were just doing, we were doing as much liquidity as we could squeeze into this entity. We were just, passing it through every single day. And ultimately, that kind of started to close up for a couple of reasons. One, the margin started to get slimmer, but also, as you probably won't be surprised to hear, this is 2014 to 2015. Some of the Bitcoin, we were actually starting to, one of the first groups that were actually starting to process, KYC, which is Know Your Customer, laws, and actually collect driver's licenses and IDs and actually do all the stuff, we were being asked to do by the government. We kind of started to come across a lot of people who didn't want to, share their information with us, or people who were being really sketchy. And we just said, what, enough is enough. Let's actually move forward to a more, uniform and legitimate practice. So we got into what, that was the beginning stages of a company that we're operating right now, which is called Pelicoin. And that's a cryptocurrency kiosk company. And so what we did is we found this guy who was out in Encinitas, California, who was taking Gen Mega, which is a big ATM manufacturer. They have a universal kiosk that you could literally build a back end to sell anything. This guy in California had built a back end to sell cryptocurrency. So we started talking to him, And I think we had a prototype machine down here in New Orleans that we had in a cafe down here for a few months, and just said, this guy in Atlanta made it for us. We'll see if we can make any money trying to sell Bitcoin in this cafe. And we actually did really well with that little machine, but it was, for example, it had a electromagnetic lock. So whenever the power would go out in the cafe, the machine was just unlocked, and anyone could just open it up and take the cash out of it if they wanted to. But so we graduated up to a bigger, nicer machine, in a Gen Mega kiosk, and we put 3 out in New Orleans. They did extremely well right off the bat, and then we grew that business organically into 5 different states, I think 13 different markets. The rest is history. And then in what we're actually kind of pivoting to now, Drew, is we have a new company called Crypto Flip, and I've been kind of quarterbacking Pelicoin. Brown has been, adjacent to me, quarterbacking Crypto Flip, and it's a SaaS. And essentially, what happens, we plugged into this software company's software, and put an API in there where people could go into one of their customer stores, which they have 7,000 nationwide, and buy Bitcoin in their stores using their existing software. So we're kind of in the nascent stages of launching that, and trying to garner more of their clients and bring them on board, and operate through them. So that's kind of our next step.
Man, what a story, dude! It's just incredible. I feel like I only understood like half of what you just said.
I saw you smile whenever I mentioned Alaska, because I remember the day I left after working 4 months up there in the bush. I was walking through the airport in Anchorage, and I heard someone go, "Haynie," and I heard it was you and your brother, who just happened to be walking through the airport in Anchorage after a fishing trip that you guys went on. So that was hilarious.
We had a hell of a trip. We did a self-guided raft trip down the Antioch River, and it was awesome. We were a little bit early for the king salmon bite. We caught some nice fish, but it was great.
Yeah.
So we'll have to go back to Alaska one day. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Man. For sure, I'm in.
So here's the burning question I never can get out of my mind. If I was smart enough to buy Bitcoin in 2013, which I wasn't, if I'd have bought it for $100, the day it went to 200, I'd have been out. The day it went to 300, I mean, we are selling it. No way. Why in the world did you hold on to this stuff for so long? Or like, is it like a DNA thing? Are you really smart? Are you really stupid? Like, what happened?
In a word, it just conviction. I mean, the more we read about it, the more we thought it was something that was really going to catch on. Usually I get that question from the other side, which is someone going, "Oh, well, I could have bought Bitcoin like you did. And, that didn't take any work." But yeah, you're right. It's like, once you've gone 1,000x on your investment, it's like, okay, is it time to get out now? And for us, no, it really wasn't. So, and in the last year, we did unload a little bit in the last year, and we rolled into some private equity and private debt deals, and kind of diversified a little bit, got to some real estate. But yeah, man, we're still bullish even through this market, and I think especially Ethereum, there's some pretty exciting things on the horizon with Ethereum and their ETH 2.0. So yeah, we're holding for the long haul. See where it takes us.
Yeah, well, I think you're probably on the right boat. Especially when you got on the boat, it's really important. So y'all are looking at some, in my experience, people who are big, what I will call Bitcoin people or Web3 people. It's like we're speaking a different language. You don't have like a good value-based mindset. Your thought of investing and mine are very different.
Sure.
I wouldn't say that with you. And that's what really kind of impresses me is you kind of have this Bitcoin area, but you also can live in what I'll call the real cash flow world too, which is impressive. How are you thinking about different opportunities? Maybe they're debt opportunities or real estate plays to kind of balance out where y'all are.
Well, so we mentioned before we started the podcast that you talked to Doug Stokes, and I guess I'll be on the week after him, so he'll be y'all's last episode. But Doug has really helped me kind of turn the corner with that stuff, and I'm a client of his. But the way I think of it, and kind of something of a mentality I fostered from him, is that you kind of want to silo each tranche of assets or investments or whatever you have into different silos. And I also kind of put those silos on a spectrum of risk, and obviously at one end of the spectrum, we have our cryptocurrency holdings, And that's where we have the most weight right now. And whenever we have opportunities, sometimes we try to, like I said, last year unloaded, and then, try to rebalance your portfolio. On the other end, I see real estate. I think it's it's not going away. They're not making any more of it. It's super safe. It's almost like you have a guaranteed return there. So in between that, we have, like I said, some private equity and private debt exposure. Yeah, man, we're just trying to keep a well balanced portfolio, and make sure we take advantage of all the deals that are out there. And I lean on a lot of, like I said, I lean on Doug, but also, I've talked to you a few times. I talked to another guy from Shreveport, Ballard Johnson, and, another one of my colleagues here in New Orleans, David Chase. And I'm kind of always talking to people and picking their head, picking their brains apart and trying to find good deals that are out there, and see if we can come up with the liquidity to commit to the ones we like.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard because if you're looking at a lot of deals, it takes a lot of brain power. You're also running Pelicoin, and you kind of have this new crypto flip going on. What's the team or structure look like, or is it just you and your brother kind of knocking all this out?
In those 3 years after college, and even whenever I got back into New Orleans from traveling, I learned that I really don't like managing people. It's something that does not come naturally to me, and I shy away from it. So, yeah, we've never had any employees on with any of our entities, and any type of labor or work we need to have done. We just outsource or contract people to help us with that. So I forgot the question, Drew.
No, that you answered it. We don't have
Okay.
employees. We figured
Yeah,
it out. Yeah.
yeah, and I lean on other guys to kind of help me with any type of with. I try to put myself into a room with the guys who know the most about that stuff and make sure I'm the dumbest guy in the room, and then I ask as many questions as I possibly can. So that's my learning process.
Man, I love it. You told me that we had lunch at a Superior a while back, and you said that, and there's just so much humility in that statement, and it's actually harder to do than you think. Most of us want to be smart or thought of as smart, but
Sure.
that's it's a pro move. It's a pro move to be at the table with other smart people and just say, "Yeah, let's do that. That sounds good."
Yeah, it's like you're intellectually freeloading off people, but everyone loves to talk so much about what they know a lot about that people don't really think about it that way. But yeah, it's I'm sure some of those guys I mentioned earlier are probably like, man, this is the third time Haynie's texted me this week trying to ask me about some kind of 529 loan or something like that.
Yeah. What's a cap rate? Haynie, come on, man, get on the internet.
Right.
That's why I love the podcast. Is I get to learn so much from you and from everybody else. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, man, I'm sure. It's I've listened to the first few episodes, and another guy, good friends with Scott Weston, and he's helped me a lot with real estate deals as well. So yeah, man, it's been great so far.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. Again, I don't know a whole lot about crypto, and all I know is like blockchain is the pipes for the future, infrastructure for the future. Where do you kind of see all this going in 20 years? I don't think it's going away.
20 years is quite the horizon for talking of it's a 12-year-old asset class. Some of the places it's already gone is no one could have ever guessed. Talking about JPEGs of rocks that are selling for millions and millions of dollars. Obviously, there's been some head scratchers along the way, but I mean, I think ultimately the way to think about it is that anytime you need to transfer value in any capacity whatsoever, you can have kind of the old system where you have a computer or two, maybe some kind of intranet or some kind of internal server that stores that data, or everyone can share it, and you're not relying on one single point that could fail. So I think some of the more interesting use cases of it, you hear these guys talking about, or I'm not sure if you heard of this, but in Nicaragua they were talking about, and I think to some degree did roll out a blockchain based real estate. They put all the deeds and change of title onto a blockchain, and they did so because they were starting to have, like, Zimbabwe in the 90s. They had the situation where Robert Mugabe, who was the prime minister at the time, started saying, hey, this 10,000 acre farm that you have, I think this actually belongs to my cousin now. and they're just literally taking people's property from them.
Wow.
And so they started to have this kind of crooked, process that was starting to unfold in Honduras as well. And excuse me, I said Nicaragua earlier. I think I meant Honduras, where they essentially said, we're just start putting all these chains of title on a blockchain. And that way, whenever someone comes along and says, who owns this, who owned this before, the current owner, whatever, it's all available. It's publicly accessible information. And I mean, that information is, you look at a tax assessor's website, it's already publicly